Sihiye Mishakeila. Verse from Parshas Mishpatim. Lo Sihiye Mishakeila v'akar b'atzecha mispar yamecha amale. There will be no bereaved or barren woman in your land. I'll fill the number of your days. V'vatam esavaya lekechem v'berach eslachmacha v'esmemecha v'asirasi machla nikkerbecha. And you shall serve Havaya elokechem, and he will bless your bread and your water, and he'll move illness from your midst. These two verses contain the three basic blessings of physical life: livelihood, sustenance, life, and good health, and children, healthy, thriving children. I mean, so it should be. Great, these are beautiful blessings. How do we get them? It seems that serve Havaya, serve God, and these blessings will come to pass. Right away we say, but wait a second, if that's the case, that, all I have to do is have service of God, and then I'll have these blessings, why is it that the Gemara tells us that actually service of God does not affect these blessings, because these blessings are predetermined? We got to say, the quantity, and then we say a Jew doesn't have mazel, so whatever seems to be predetermined, you can kind of override it. For the context of what we're saying here, these things seem to be predetermined, so why are you saying that our service is going to elicit these blessings if that's already been decided for us? And by the way, once we're on this right now, what is this whole deal with service of God? What comes from it? Does it affect him? As in, if we're going to do something, is that going to awaken God to give us certain blessings? What is everybody getting out of this relationship sort of situation? Well, an answer to that depends who you ask. Some people say, well, actually God is not affected. And then we saw it from Bracious Roberts, does God care if you shech from the nape or the neck? No. So what's the point of the mitzvahs? To refine man and creation. L'tzaref esabrios. We say, Eov, if you are righteous, what do you do for him? If you do not, good stuff, what do you do to him? You have no effect on him. And then there's other verses that say, actually, the actions that we do affect him. And that's how we see that when Hashem says to Moshe, you're going to wish me luck, Suri latchateshi, you weaken the rock that bore you, seems to say that our actions do affect the strengthening or weakening, God forbid, of God's name. So how does that align? And also, Eli V'Eli Divrei Kim Chayim, these are both truth, these are both Torah, but they contradict each other. How do they align? The first way that we answer this is by saying, well, it depends on which level you're talking about. There's aspects of God that are so far removed from creation, so what creation does not affect those levels that are removed from creation, which kind of makes sense in that regard. The lowers that do have a relationship with creation, even though this is infinity, this is God, etc., those levels we do affect. We've seen that multiple times with looking through the attributes that our actions are going to affect the light coming down through the vessels, or the vessels going to be intact, complete vessels, all that sort of stuff. So is God affected by what we do? Well, it depends on which kind of level we're talking about. Remember, we're trying to figure out, if I say that you should serve God, will elicit these blessings, does that sequence really work? That's what we're trying to figure out. That seems to be a good enough answer to say, well, it depends if you're talking about higher levels or lower levels. God with a relationship to creation, the aspect of God that's too high from creation, fine. But then go back to the original verse, it says, serve Havaya, serve God. Okay, Havaya has a relationship with creation, we established that. Elokechem is also, that's nature. Elokim is the gematria of Hateva, the nature. Havaya is the driving force of creation, but the packaging it comes through is Elokim, which is nature. Havaya is the turtle, Elokim is the turtle shell. Because Havaya is Haya Hovei, is, was, and always will be. It contains all those letters within the name. So that's the name of infinity. It's beyond time and space, but yet it has a relationship. So serve Havaya Elokim, these two names have a relationship to creation. You serve Havaya Elokim, then will send forth these blessings. But here's the thing, when you go to the original verse, it says, V'hasirosi machla mikrebecha, and I will remove illness from your midst. Wait a second, who's I? Where did that come in? That's what brought us to the whole thing about the third person narrator of the Torah, that someone is narrating the Torah. Who's narrating the Torah? Well, only what's higher than everything. The storyteller is per se removed from the story. That's who can speak in third person. So what's higher than Havaya? The higher dimension of God, which we call Atzmos, essence, the essence of God, is narrating the Torah. Okay, but then if the narrator is saying Vasirosi and I will remove, that means the narrator inserted himself into the narration. Why? I thought what we do doesn't affect him. I thought he has no relationship to creation. So why is he all of a sudden appearing now in the narration? What just happened? We had an answer that sort of settled the contradiction, but now when we look at the verse again, we realize that there's a whole new question that comes up. Because actually, what is I doing here? The higher level that doesn't seem to connect to creation, all of a sudden it's in the middle of the verse. Because everything in the Torah is so exact. So that's why we do get very quote-unquote nitpicky. Every letter of Torah is exact. God doesn't confetti creation. God doesn't just throw words out in the Torah. That brought us to the conclusion, so it must be that Atzmos, essence, Atzmos Amos, or Ein Sof, Baruch Hu, God's essence somehow is involved with all of this. That starts the question all up again. Because either saying it's not, and then, okay, do we have a relationship here? Or what is Atzmos doing in the middle of the narration of the pasuk? So that's when we started saying, okay, now we got to look at everything all over again. When we said, does God care if you shech from the nape or the neck? Another way that we can say that is saying, does Atzmos care if you shech from the nape or the neck? As in, does Atzmos care about the details of all the mitzvos? Not necessarily, because we said, no, it doesn't. However, what does he care about? He cares about l'tzar v'saprius, the refinement of man and creation. This higher level of God that's usually very far removed from creation is still invested, per se, of what the outcome of creation is going to be. And that is supposed to be the refinement of man and creation. That is what we are doing here. We are being put into what we view as a physical, actual world, and our job is to turn the physical, actual world into a spiritual home for God. The details are more about the lights and the vessels and all that, and that connects to the levels of God that have the relationship with creation. So that's more pertinent there. But when we're talking about the overall picture, then yes, that's Atzmos is going to be involved in. So when we're looking at serve God, God, the verses that we're looking at, our service of God, etc., that's obviously tapping into what the entire purpose of what our divine service is, which is making this world a home for God. And a home is where you can be your real self. God is not obvious in this world. We're trying to create a world where God will be obvious. So that's where essence inserts himself into the narration. So once we have that, then we started looking into, let's break down what actual service is. What are the components of it? Service in general is a fear-based pathway. There's a servant, master. Servant puts himself aside for the master. The way that would translate is that God wants something from you and you're like, not in the mood. Well, there's no not in the mood when it comes to serving God. There's, regardless of your mood, we got to get done what has to get done. Or your opinion on the matter. I know you don't want to, honey, but you still have to do it. Whatever it is, that's what that relationship would be. And we see that that's fear-based, because fear-based is the contraction of the self. The smallness before the greatness and the muchness. And also, we see how that's part of the structure of davening. We say modim anachnu lach, but we say moda ani, and we say hodu Hashem. These are all terms we say thank and praise, but they're really terms of acknowledgement. Acknowledgement means, I understand that you're correct, but you're so far removed from me, I can't fully comprehend it. Because God's viewpoint of the world, that we are not the actual existence, He is actual existence. We can't fully comprehend that. Well, it seems real, this world that we live in. Well, the same way like when you're in a dream, everything seems so real. But as soon as you wake up, it's all just gone. As long as you're not the one fueling it anymore. We are here, there is a realness to us being here, but we are not true existence because God has to keep us in existence. Now, it's not just the fear base, it's also, service also has love base to it. Here we're looking at fear as the starting point, and that's going to lead us to the love relationship. How do we see that translate when we're talking about service? That is prayer. Prayer is called the service of the heart because it's supposed to act upon the heart and transform the heart, because during prayer is when the godly soul can connect to its source, and it's supposed to draw down from that extra power and inspiration, etc., to affect the animal soul, the natural soul. Hey, we're going to get all inspired now, etc., and then we're going to go into the world and make sure that everything we do is directed toward godliness. So we're going to channel all of your energies in the correct way. That's what it's all about. Last time we ended up with the section of Tanya talking about how for the Beinoni, but we saw how that was relevant to us as well. The Beinoni can never be comfortable by saying that, oh, I had a beautiful davening, there was so much love, burning love, etc. The animal soul is still there and it's kind of just dormant. It's going to wake up afterwards. You can never get too comfortable by saying, okay, I got this all taken care of. We have a lesson to us. We don't think like, oh, I got this mitzvah taken care of, because that could just lead to laziness on our part. We think, oh, I don't have to still be vigilant here. This is another part of Tanya that talks about, do you guys remember when we learned about how every person has their slice of world that they have to elevate? That's what this is. You'll see. Not only does the animal soul, called the Nefesh Bahamas, vital soul, the natural soul, all interchangeable language, we call it an animal soul because it's very instinct driven. There's good and not good depending on how we use it. So not only does the animal soul ascend from klipat noga to holiness when it performs a mitzvah. Remember, klipa is the shell of a peel, and klipat noga is called the shining klipa because that can be elevated. That's kind of the gray zone. So if you extract the white, as in if you extract the holiness from it, you've now elevated it. But if you don't use it for correct, then you send it to sitra achar, the other side. Remember, you could only extract that with proper tshuva. But also, all the food and drink that sustained and gave him the strength to perform the mitzvah are also elevated. So if you remember, when you do a mitzvah, there's a whole chain reaction of everything that allowed that mitzvah to occur, all of it gets elevated. So it's not just the fact that you said a bracha on food, however that food got to your table, all the steps that it took to get that food to your table, not just on your part going to buy it and cook it, etc., but also everyone and everything else that contributed to that food getting to your table, that you now said a bracha on it, there's an entire chain reaction. Massive ripple effect, chain reaction of elevation. That happens when you say a bracha, when you're going to use this in the right kind of way. And that's pretty good. Every Jewish soul is given the ability and responsibility to elevate a portion of this physical world through the 613 mitzvahs. There are two categories of mitzvahs, 248 positive and 365 prohibitive. Remember, those are like the limbs of the body and the blood cells, because the blood cells, they channel where everything is supposed to go. The limbs of the body, that's active, action, making stuff happen. The elevating effect of mitzvahs on physical matter takes two forms, one positive and the other negative, i.e. restrictive. So we say restrictive, no, this is not for you. Let's make sure that all the holiness is going in the right kind of way. And then the other one is doing something that actually makes it holy. What we're looking at here is that how can you say I have a slice of world to elevate? Do I need to go and step on every single piece of grass in my area to elevate it? How do I make my entire neighborhood elevated if I'm not exactly walking on every single stone? The way that it works is because of this whole chain reaction. I might not have driven on every road in the neighborhood, but as long as it was the truck that brought the fruit, etc., to the store where I then bought it, and then I drove to get that fruit, that's how you can have the massive ripple effect of the elevation. Because of everything that contributes to the mitzvah, not just the one moment of mitzvah itself. That's why you have to understand also, remember how powerful a mitzvah is. When you think about what you have to do, it's so simple. The massive effects that happen, the reverberations that happen from mitzvah, seismic reverberations, just a simple mitzvah, the amount of elevation that occurs, it's incomprehensible. So the 248 positive mitzvahs correspond to the body's 248 limbs. Remember, we have the whole thing with the limbs of the king. It corresponds to it because these are all action. They make things happen. Every organ of the body is a vehicle for a particular faculty of the soul. It brings that faculty into active expression. That's part of how you have tamim tiem of alakecha, be complete. If you are using all your organs to do all the mitzvahs, etc., the limbs and the organs to do the mitzvahs, that's how you can have completeness. Similarly, every positive mitzvah is a vehicle for the expression of a particular aspect of divine will and brings about a godly revelation. When you do a mitzvah, you're fulfilling God's will. Because why are you doing the mitzvah? Because God says, I want this. That's the only reason why we do the mitzvah. Only a soul in a body can do a mitzvah. Not the angels, not the souls in the higher realms. Only us. The prohibitive mitzvah correspond to the 365 blood vessels of the body. The blood vessels act as a conduit, channeling blood in the right direction so that it will not be randomly, wastefully dispersed through the body. Similarly, the prohibitive mitzvahs prevent the life force of holiness from being funneled off into the klipa. Thereby increasing their power, they channel the life force toward deserving recipients. So now you understand how the prohibitive mitzvahs are like the blood vessels, because they're making sure everything goes where it's supposed to. Remember, we could have the bleeding puncture wound otherwise. When all the souls of Israel, representing the vitality of all physical matter, fulfill all the mitzvahs, drawing down Hashem's life by performing the positive mitzvahs and confining it to the realm of holiness by observing the prohibitive mitzvahs, they elevate the vitality of the entire world from klipa noga to holiness. When we all do what we're supposed to do, that means we are elevating what can be elevated, and we are channeling holiness only to that which gets it, which means that the negative forces, which are anyways kept on life support, will just slowly wither and die away. Amen. And then there are no more negative forces, so we can have a beautiful, elevated world. An additional virtue in mitzvahs involving action, aside from elevating the animal soul, or the vitalizing soul's energy clothed in the letters of speech and Torah study, prayer, the like, or the energy clothed in the performance of mitzvahs involving action, drives its entire growth of vitality from the blood, which is of klipat noga, meaning all the food and drink that one is eaten and drunk and which have become blood. These were under the dominion of klipat noga and drew the vitality from it. When you do a mitzvah, you say words of Torah, you study, etc., everything that is powering that all gets elevated. So the energy that's moving through your body and everything that your body converts into energy, etc., all of it gets elevated. And then there's the ripple effect that goes outside of your own self too. Now that the person performs a mitzvah with the energy derived from this food and drink, this klipa is transformed from evil to good and is absorbed into holiness by means of the energy of the animal soul that grows from it. As in, now that you as a person can use this. The energy nourished by objects that derive their vitality from this klipa, which has now clothed itself in these letters of Torah and prayer or in the performance of this mitzvah, which actually constitute the unveiled expression of the inner aspect of God's will. When you use all these energies, you are taking all the energy that you're deriving from food and drink and you're using it toward holiness. So through doing that, you have elevated the food and drink that you eat. So instead of it just be either static or it becoming degraded, God forbid, going into Sitra Achra, the other side, you actually make it something holy. And their vitality expanding and perform mitzvahs is also absorbed, like the mitzvahs themselves, into the blessed Ein Sof light, which is his will expressed in mitzvahs. With the vitality, the energy of the animal soul is likewise elevated and absorbed into the Ein Sof light, because whatever is holy is unified with God. So all this that we are elevating achieves a unification with God. And since the energy necessary for performing mitzvahs was supplied by food and drink, the vitality of the food and drink is likewise absorbed into the Ein Sof light, together with the mitzvahs performance are made possible. This is just looking at just regular food and drink, everything that we are consuming. Obviously it has to be kosher, obviously we say the bracha on it, etc., then using that energy for a divine purpose. So we're not just eating to consume. We're not just here. We're not just. All of it is for a higher purpose. It's how are we gearing ourselves, what perspective, what's the lens, what's the higher drive of everything that we're doing. We're just kind of going about the day and, oh, here's a mitzvah, I'll do a mitzvah here, versus my whole day fueled toward, I am a Jew living in this world and everything that I do is ultimately for a higher purpose. So even when I do mundane stuff, even the mundane stuff is for a higher purpose. Because I'm not just here. Sure, I'm working within the world because we live in a physical world. So I gotta be doing honest work, good work, etc. But it's not an end unto itself. There's a higher purpose for all of it. That kind of attitude creates the whole ripple effect of elevation. For sure for mitzvah if you're doing the mitzvah, but even if you're not specifically doing the mitzvah now. Because if I'm working in order to have money to give tzedakah, that also creates the ripple effect of elevation. And to buy my kosher food and have a home with a mezuzah on it, etc. So when we do this, we create the massive ripple effect of elevation. The Aleph Klipa Noga, which constitutes the vitality of this physical and corporeal world as a whole, will ascend as well. That's how we have the ripple effect of elevation within the physical world. When the whole neshama, the divine soul in all of Israel, which is divided into 600,000 particular offshoots, the standard figure for the members of the Jewish nation, all individual souls being further subdivisions of these general souls, will fulfill each individual soul thereof the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, refrain from the 365 prohibitions, to restrain the 365 blood vessels of the animal soul in the body, so that they do not draw, nurture, or receive vitality by means of such transgression from any one of the three completely unclean klipa, from which are derived the 365 biblical prohibitions and rabbinical prohibitions, their offshoots. I'm not sure what happened in that sentence, but basically was trying to say that we consider for the Jewish people there's 600,000 original parent souls. Where do we get that number from? Because when the Jews left Egypt and you do the count, it comes out to a little over 600,000, but the number that's considered as 600,000, everybody to come is an offshoot of one of those souls. The 600,000 tree trunks, and then you have multiple limbs that come from the same soul. So it's all of us being reincarnated from those souls. So it kind of branches out into multiple souls. Part of that, it's not just the reincarnation and the rectification, it's also you come back as different versions so you can fulfill all the mitzvahs. Your soul can fulfill all the mitzvahs. When they will each do what they're supposed to, fulfill the mitzvahs, that's how we elevate the whole world. Because everybody ends up in many different places and many different iterations, doing all the different kinds of mitzvahs. Through not doing what they shouldn't do, you're channeling things in the right direction, or doing what you're supposed to do, you're elevating. Through all of that, that creates the massive effect of the entire world getting elevated. I was saying something about we don't realize how the Rebbeim, the Rebbes of Chabad, brainwashed us. And what I mean by that, to the extent that when we talk about why should you do a mitzvah, it's not for reward and punishment. You'll do a mitzvah because the mitzvah itself is so precious. Reward and punishment, how pithy. Now, I'm saying that kind of facetiously because obviously the reward of a mitzvah, even just going to Gan Eden, is a very great thing. We're not going to make that small. But the Chabad emphasis is so not on reward and punishment. Not because it doesn't exist. It does exist, obviously. But that's not the emphasis. The emphasis is on the relationship that we have with God and the fact that only we can fulfill His will. So I was trying to explain that, and then someone got so upset. What a reincarnation! If your incentive to do a mitzvah is that you don't get reincarnated as a bug, fine. But it's not what our perspective is. You can have 10 people in a room that are all living for a very specific purpose. These are 10 very good purposes, but they're not necessarily the same. The perspective you're going to get from Chabad Chassidus is we need to make a home for God because God is God and we want to have a relationship with God. We must have a relationship with God. Everything else, you'll get reward for a mitzvah, but that doesn't even compare to what the mitzvah itself is. How could you bribe us with a reward for mitzvah when it's so small compared to what mitzvah is? If you hang out with me 10 times, then I'll give you an ice cream. Sure, for some people getting the ice cream is good, but what about those 10 times we got to hang out together? Isn't hanging out 10 times way better than an ice cream? So that's the perspective that we have. I'm happy for an ice cream, but I want the 10 times of hanging out with you. That's worth way more. But it's not a mystery. You know what's hard for you. We're not even just talking about from non-religious to religious. There are certain mitzvahs that are very hard for people. Some people, anger is just so, I lose my temper every single time. There's a challenge right there. Some people obviously stroll or having guests. It's really hard for them to have guests. Some people are just like, everybody come. If I don't have 100 people in my home, then it's not a home. There's some people who are like that. There's some people, oh my God, I have to plan 3 months in advance if someone's coming to my house. We're looking more at not just about, everybody has to be Shomer Shabbos and keep kosher. We're looking also at very specific things like that. For you, in your own personal life journey, the things that are difficult for you, that's a good indication of that's something important for you to do. We're talking about Torah mitzvahs, obviously. Trust, if trust in God is something hard, well, it's probably hard for everybody. Having belief in God or coming through a certain thing. Again, we're not just talking about keeping Shabbos. Not only like that. We're talking about more particular mitzvahs. Some people, tzedakah is very hard for them. They're very miserly. It's really hard for them to give tzedakah. So that's a good indication. This is something you should be working on. And then you kind of get your bonuses. You get your booster packs with all the mitzvahs that are easy for you. There are certain mitzvahs that are easy. Either you have no problem with them or you love them. So lean into them. Do them. People think, oh, it's so easy. Never mind. No, God's giving you this opening. Take it. Did I tell you guys about that? Where it says by Pirkei Avos, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Shneersohn, Hashem wanted to bring merit to the Jewish people. Therefore, He gave them a lot of Torah mitzvahs. So you can look at Him. Why do we have to have so many? Our life would be easier if He gave us one mitzvah. But then, if you connect it, I think there's a Gemara somewhere, or whatever it is, that every person has to do at least one mitzvah, the Shema, as in just for God's sake. Literally, do it for God's sake. Not because you get any enjoyment out of it, not because of anything else, but just God said so, so I do it. So when you bring it back to this verse, why did God give us so many Torah mitzvahs? So that everybody could find their mitzvah, that they could just own it. So it's actually God did us a favor, because if it would be only one mitzvah, then imagine what percentage would we get of people doing that just for its own sake. But this way, when there's so many of them, everybody could find their mitzvah, that they're, oh, God wants me to do this, I can totally do this one. The ones that are easy for you, you should embrace that. Own it. Make it your mitzvah. Just because it's easy, don't be negligent with it, but also don't think, oh, if it's easy, what is this, a cheap pass? No, it's a gift. Okay, where are we? Since all that derives its vitality from 3 holy unclean klipot cannot rise to holiness, we're due to transgress any prohibition and thereby cause the particular blood vessel associated with that prohibition to receive vitality from these klipot. The violating soul could no longer ascend to God, having been tainted by the impurity of the 3 impure klipot. So the 3 impure klipot, the shalosh klipos hatmeos, these are all the prohibitions, basically. So not just the gray zone stuff, but the thing that God says, thou shalt not. Do not steal. You don't rob from the rich to give to the poor. We don't believe in that. That's not how you give tzedakah. That money, that stolen money now, is considered money that is in the grips of the 3 impure klipot. You can't just elevate it by, okay, never mind, but I have pure intentions. It doesn't work like that. Versus just all legal monies that you have. You could do anything with it. So when you give tzedakah with it, that's holy now. For these klipot could never be elevated, but must be nullified and utterly destroyed. As it's written, and I shall banish the unclean spirit from the earth. The reason why something is prohibited is not because God just decided to randomly say, no, you can't have this. It's prohibited because us in this physical world, we don't have the capacity of elevating that. So God is, you know what, never mind, just don't even bother getting tangled with that because it's not going to work. What your capacities are not for elevating this. It's for elevating all the stuff that's permitted. Another example would be orla. Orla is that you're not allowed to have fruit from a tree that's under 3 years old. It has to be in its 4th year already. So if you eat that fruit, but I said a bracha on it, but no, but you're not allowed to be eating that fruit. You can't be benefiting from that tree or anything like that. So all the prohibitions. Similarly, anything which derives its vitality from them can never ascend to holiness. Therefore, only the observance of all the 365 prohibitions allows the entire vital soul to ascend without any part held back by the impurity of these klipot. When furthermore, every individual soul will fulfill also the 245 positive mitzvot, thereby drawing down the blessed Ein Sof light below, to elevate to Him and to bind and unite with Him the entire vital soul, which is in the 248 limbs of the body. As in the 248 limbs of the body, as in this soul, we call the animal soul, the natural soul, the vitalizing soul, because that's literally the soul that makes your body alive. That's the soul that animates your physical body. Also godly soul, but here, that's specifically what this does. When you do what God wants, you become unified with him. We're getting to the point where all 248 limbs of the body will be unified with God by doing all the 240 mitzvahs. Can't do a particular mitzvah, we learn about it instead. There's a story once of someone who came to the Rebbe, they had difficulties with a very particular mitzvah. And they were very honest with the Rebbe about, this one I can't do. I'm not doing this one. I know Judaism says it's not okay, but I can't. The Rebbe's response to him was just, every Jew has to do as many mitzvahs as he can. So everybody knows somebody who's got something. They got their thing. But this person doesn't, kosher is not whatever, this person, fill in the blank. It's like, well, there's still so many other mitzvahs for them to do. So we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. This one's a struggle. Okay, we have more options. There's more to do. Until you're going to get the other ones in line, there's still all the other mitzvahs to do. So we don't just give up. Everybody's got to do as many as they can. Which is in the 248 limbs of the body in perfect unity, such is the effect of a mitzvah, so that they become actually one with him. Or as we said, holiness means unifying with God. In accordance with his will, that there be an abode for him in the lower realms. That's making a home for God down here. And so great is this unity that they, the limbs of the body, with the vitality of the animal soul invested in them, become a chariot for God, as were the patriarchs. Whose every limb was in total submission to the divine will, and so will every Jew become a chariot by performing the mitzvah. The patriarch, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, are called a chariot to God because chariot doesn't drive itself, it drives wherever the driver drives it. The patriarchs, great men, great leaders, wealthy men, etc. And yet, all of them was just dedicated. God, where do you want me to go and what do you want me to do? The patriarchs, they achieve that on a constant, all their life state. The rest of us, we can't necessarily maintain that state. So instead, every time you do a mitzvah, you achieve that state in the moment of a mitzvah. You are patriarchal in your action the moment that you do a mitzvah, in the sense that you have submitted your body, this organ, limb, etc. is totally united, submitted to God in the moment of the mitzvah. Once the totality of the vital soul of the community of Israel, as in once all the souls all together will achieve all this, the conglomerate will become a holy chariot for God, then also the general vitality of this world, which not consists of klipa noga, will also emerge from its impurity and sickness. Impurity refers to the evil of the klipa, sickness to the element of good that klipa noga contains, which is nevertheless the good of klipa, not holiness. When the totality of everything gets elevated and will ascend to holiness to become a chariot for God upon the revelation of his glory in the world to come, then all flesh will behold godliness together, and he will appear over them with the majestic beauty of his power, and the glory of God will fill the whole world. That is what we are trying to achieve. No going up to heaven, no us trying to get whatever's going to come next. Is this world is going to be a world of God's world. It will be obvious. This is God's world. Israel will see eye to eye. The human eye will see the truth of godliness, just as the supernal eye sees it, just as they saw it at the giving of the Torah, of which it is written, you showed yourselves that it be known that Havaya is Elokim. Havaya and Elokim are really the same, the eternal shell. I.e., despite the concealment of the four-letter divine name, which denotes God's limitless power, by the name Elokim, which signifies God's self-limitation. It is the former that still pervades all existence. There is nothing else besides him. Only God exists in the world, and when we'll do everything we're supposed to do, that is messianic error. We're saying, oh, this is God's world. So obvious that this is all God. But whereas the revelation at Sinai lasted only a short time, the revelation in the future will be permanent. So we experienced it once at Har Sinai, and again, it will be forever. Through this ascent of klipa noga to holiness, the three unclean klipa will be utterly annihilated and nullified. For the nurture and vitality which they now receive from holiness comes to them only by way of klipa noga, the intermediary between them. All the negative stuff, we're going to cut off life support, and all the neutral stuff, holy stuff, all of it would just be channeled, would just be fed through holiness now. Klipa noga, containing both good and evil, is the medium through which these klipa, which are completely evil, receive their vitality from godliness, which is completely good. When klipa noga ascends to godliness, the impure klipa, no longer having any access to godly vitality, cease to exist. So then you have white, black, as in good, evil, and then everything in between, the gray zone. Gradually, when we all do what we're supposed to do, the gray zone slowly keeps becoming white zone. It becomes all purified. Which means, how do you get from white to black when there's no gray anymore? You can't. So that means all the black and then all the negative evil stuff just gone. Go away. Goodbye. We will not feed you anymore. Because you no longer have the channel conduit where you try to suck from holiness from. Because only holiness gives life, because only God is true life. Through Torah mitzvahs, we try to achieve it, and then when Mashiach comes, that will be the completion of that achievement. It follows, therefore, that the purpose of the days of Mashiach and of the resurrection, namely the revelation of his glory and divinity and the banishment of the spirit of impurity from the earth, is entirely dependent on our drawing down his godliness and the blessed Ein Sof light upon all the 248 limbs of the vital soul of all Israel. For by way of the vital soul, all the world will be suffused with godliness, achieved by the vital soul's performance of all the 248 positive mitzvahs. As in, we only have now to make this happen. Once Mashiach comes, that's it. Sure, we're going to have all the Torah and everything we're going to have, but that's not going to be toward the goal anymore. It's going to be something totally different. And this purpose is also dependent on our banishing the spirit of impurity, the three impure klipot, from the vital soul of all Israel. Don't feed the negative forces. For by being banished from the vital soul, the spirit of impurity is banished from the entire world. So when you banish it, then there's a ripple effect also of the banishment. And this is accomplished by the vital soul's observance of all 365 prohibitive mitzvahs, thus preventing its 365 blood vessels from drawing nurture from the spirit of impurity. Why this parallel effect on the entire world? How is it that when I do something, it impacts the whole world? For the community of Israel, comprising 600,000 particular souls, is the general source of vitality for the world as a whole. Since the world was created for the sake of these souls, the world was created for the Torah mitzvahs. There's lot of things that need to make that happen. We're talking about civilizing the world. That's why there's a purpose for everybody. Of course, God isn't just confetti creation. Everybody has purpose. But specifically, God wanted a world of Torah mitzvos, and these souls are the ones that make that happen. Each specific one of them contains and teaches related to the vitality of 1/600,000th part of the entire world. This part of the world depends on his vital soul for his elevation to God through the vital soul's own elevation. This means that one elevates his portion of the world by his partaking of this world, the requirements of his body and vital soul in the service of God. We live in a physical world, and we are supposed to live in the physical world and live in a spiritual way, in a godly way within the physical world. Through that, you elevate your slice of world. How do I know what my slice of world is? Wherever you end up, that is your slice of world. And when you will do Torah mitzvahs in those locations, you say Shema, you say a bracha, you do all the things you're supposed to do, you have now elevated your slice of world. And when we all do that, that completes the elevation of the whole world to bring messianic times. By using the objects of this world that one needs for the sake of serving God, one elevates his portion of the world. For example, eating, drinking, and the like. You see, these are very physical things that we're talking about. One's dwelling and all his utensils. Your plate, your fork, all of it gets elevated when you will eat correctly, as in according to Torah. But surely there are more than 600,000 souls. Besides, it is quite impossible for one person to use a 600,000th of the entire world. So how does this math work out? These 600,000 particular souls, however, are roots. And like a root from which grows numerous branches, each root soul subdivides into 600,000 sparks, each spark being one neshama. Similarly, with the nefesh and ruach in each of the four worlds, Atzilas, Bria, Atzias, Asir, in each of these four worlds are found all three soul levels, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So basically subdivides into many, many, many's. Each spark did not descend into this world to perfect itself, but to perfect the body and vital soul. So the soul is not here for its own sake. It's here for the body, for the animal soul, and for the physical world. And when we say the soul, we're talking about the godly soul. Thus is indeed a great descent, a veritable exile for the soul. For even if it becomes a perfect tzaddik, serving God with fear and delighting in an abounding love of him, it will not attain to the quality of its attachment to God with fear and love that the soul experienced prior to its descent into this corporeal world, nor even to a fraction of its earlier fear and love. In fact, there is no comparison or similarity whatsoever between them. The love and fear of God experienced by a soul on earth and that of the soul above, for as is obvious to every intelligent man, the body could not bear, etc., a love and fear of such intensity as the soul experienced above in the spiritual realms. Your soul, your godly soul, when it was up on high, experienced a love and fear and attachment to God, unlike something that we could comprehend. Even in this world, the most spiritual of entities cannot experience what it had up there. So what good does it do the godly soul to have to come down into this physical world where it cannot reach what it had up there? Because ultimately, the ultimate purpose is worth it. For it to descend, for it to go from a world of truth into a world of darkness and a world of lies into what the body is called a serpent's skin, it is worth it for the achievement of the refinement of the world. That whole descent is worth it. But its descent into this world to be clothed in a body and vital soul is for the sole purpose of perfecting them, to separate them from the evil of the three impure klipa by observing the 365 prohibitions and their offshoots, observing the biblical and rabbinic prohibitions, and to elevate his vital soul, together with the portion of the world at large that relates to it, binding and uniting them with the Ein Sof light, which he draws into them by performing all the 248 positive mitzvot through the agency of the vital soul. Since the vital soul is the one that performs all mitzvahs involving action, as explained above, that the divine soul can activate the body fulfilling the mitzvahs only by way of the vital soul. The godly soul by itself can't do a mitzvah. It needs the animal soul and body of this physical world to do a mitzvah. It is likewise written in Eitz Chaim, Portal 26, that the divine soul itself does not need perfecting at all. The godly soul doesn't need any sort of refinement. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's a piece of God. So again, what is it doing down here? What is it getting from it? Because ultimately, it's worth it. And there is no need for it to be embodied in this world in a body and vital soul, except to draw down light to perfect them, the vital soul and the body. And this parallels exactly the mystery of the exile of the Shekhinah, whose purpose is to refine the sparks of holiness, which fell into the klipot. So too does the divine soul enter into exile within the body and vital soul to perfect them and extract the sparks of holiness which they contain. In summation, creation and the soul's descent into the body were both intended for the purpose of elevating the body and vital soul, and thereby the entire world. Moreover, this objective is reached primarily through the mitzvahs involving action. Inasmuch as these mitzvahs are performed by the body and vital soul, these mitzvahs are therefore of primary importance. To say, what are we doing here? We're here to make a home for God in this world. How do we do that? Everybody has their slice of world. You being an offshoot of many, many offshoots of one primary soul, one of the 600,000 souls. All the offshoots having their slice, their 1/600,000th of the world to go and elevate. When we all do that, directing holiness the way that it should, turning what can be elevated to something that is elevated, we create a holy world and a perfect world. Your divine soul, which is fueling all this, which is motivating and driving all of this, it doesn't need this descent to come down to this world and go through this whole process. It doesn't need elevation. It is perfect. Your body and your animal soul need the elevation because they're materialistically oriented. How is it worth it? Why does the godly soul have to descend all the way down just to do a mitzvah and stuff like that? Because that is ultimately what the entire creation is all about, is making the home for God. And you need the divine soul, the godly soul inside the physical body with the animal-driven soul working upon them to make this all happen. And that is how we achieve what we're supposed to achieve. Through all that, we all do what we're supposed to be doing. We'll have ripple effective elevation to elevate the entire world to bring Mashiach now.